Howdy, and welcome back to You've Got People Problems, the podcast where we tackle the leadership challenges that no one wants to talk about, but every business faces. I'm your host, Mel Ortiz with Activate Human Capital Group. And today's conversation is with Wendy Waldron. You'll hear more about her background as we get into the episode, but what stands out most is her perspective on the role of resistance inside of organizations and how leaders can better understand the people who challenge new ideas and changes. In this conversation, we'll cover why resistance to change shows up in organizations at all, how the resistor on your team can add value if we give them the chance, and when it might be time to part ways because there's a mismatch between the resistor and the organization or the role they're in. This topic has been highly visible and consuming a lot of energy in my client organizations lately, so I'm hopeful it's timely for you too. Let's get to it. Howdy, y'all, and welcome back to You've Got People Problems. I am Mel Ortiz, and I am joined today by Wendy Waldron, who is someone that I respect tremendously. She's got an amazing set of experiences, and the topic I pitched to her for our discussion today was about the role of the resistor. And in so many of my clients, and Wendy's as well, we've all seen it, right? The people who are resistant to change, to new processes, to a lot of different things. We're going to unpack why those people have value in our lives, how to help them come around, if that's a possibility, and just share some, I think, meaty nuggets of experiences we've had with these people and why they've added value. So, Wendy, tell us about your experience and what you think people should know about your background.
Sure. Well, much of the time, I actually answer that question by introducing myself as a grown-up Girl Scout, that I am here to leave the world a better place than when I found it. And if I've done that in a day, then it's a good day. I actually did sell the cookies. I sold them, though, by the case, Mel, not by the box. And I won the prizes. And so the next year, I told all my little Girl Scout friends, hey, sell them by the case. People think it's funny. And then we all won all the prizes. So like 6-year-old Wendy went, oh, you mean you got to figure out the rules of the game and then you can win the game? Then you can know which ones to break, which ones make sense. Okay. And then you tell all your friends and then you get the pizza party.
I love it.
Yeah. So that's kind of the pattern. I was very much a Girl Scout. I worked hard at wonderful parents. I had kind of idyllic like a growing up time. My childhood was good in so many ways. And I was a scholarship kid to Colgate University. That was the goal of the first 18 years of my life. Get to a place where I could explore the world more. You mentioned connectedness earlier, and truly, I was a sociology and religion major. I just wanted to know how people worked and how we could do what we were doing better. It was always the question, why do we do it this way? How is it easier? How is it more effective? How is it more respectful? How do we just build better for ourselves and for our communities? So in terms of work history, before I really jump too much into the world of work, I was community building and doing that sort of work in higher education for a while. And then I spent a year in Mozambique as a volunteer to see the world, not because I was trying to save it, but I just wanted to try to get out a little bit. Came back and landed quite by accident, actually through a temp job at the front desk of a medical clinic. I'd come back, I was working at Smith College for a couple of years, building communities there, and went to a family wedding where I was introduced to a guy, very much all but arranged. Actually, if my culture did that, that's what happened. And complete with like the yellow rose matching game. And so he was the best man in that wedding. And I joke that he's been my best man ever since. But he happened to live in the middle of nowhere, northern central Pennsylvania. And so I relocated and started from scratch again and landed, as I said, at the front desk of a busy medical clinic. And on my second day there, I looked around and realized that there was no way to win this game. The rules weren't made in such a way that I could win. I couldn't physically pick up the phone and respond to the person in front of me at the same time. Stuff wasn't organized in such a way that I could win. So I started fixing the problems that I saw. I started aligning energy I started asking why about all kinds of things. And a couple years later, I was running the cardiology and cardiothoracic surgery division of Guthrie Health. So that I joke that I went from $9.50 an hour to running a labor budget of $9.5 million 20 years ago, like in a couple of years' time. I had wonderful mentors and teachers. And eventually we moved back here. I live in upstate New York. I was recruited back to grow some medical practices here. And we did that with behavioral health care and then eventually oncology and cancer services in a community care setting. Um, and then so it was 2018. It was just another inflection point for me. And I realized that while it had been a pretty good run, it was an accident that I was in healthcare. That what I really always did was help teams be more effective, help to lead in a given direction to make the world a better place and maybe get a pizza party on a Friday. That's what I had just always been doing. And
Yeah.
there were all these businesses. As I looked around, I joined the local chamber of commerce. There were all these people that were experts at what they did. And they were not experts at leading or managing or running a business or understanding change. And when people resisted them, they took it personally. And that there were things that I had learned that I could help with. And so I took a chance, hung out a shingle, so to speak, got some like Vistaprint business cards and put them on my personal Facebook page. And the rest is history. It's now been 7 years. Um, I just received my like 5 year, this just came in the mail today, this 5 year plaque from EOS Worldwide. And have helped so far something on the order of about 50 businesses, both here locally and up and down the Eastern Seaboard, to get everybody on the same page, to get more vision and traction, accountability, discipline on their teams, and to have a healthy work environment. We should not feel smaller when we go to work. And if we're running companies that don't maximize the human potential, then we're running companies that are like not all that they could be, right? Not just not as profitable, but they're just not having the impact in the world that most entrepreneurs that I know want to have. So that now gets to be what I help people do, is that I help business owners get more from their company, from their life, by building a team that really harnesses that human energy. So I think I have the best job in the world.
I kind of agree. Your story is amazing. Thank you for sharing that level of depth because I think that little Girl Scout experience has such clarity about the rest of your path. And it's amazing all the work I've done over the last 20 years. So much of our superhighways in our brains, by the time we're 15 years old, are pretty well established. Then we just go forth and get more mature and more sophisticated at using those superhighways to our benefit and the benefit of others. And so, as we were talking before we hit the record button about connectedness, this strength in the Strengths Finder language, but that it's about the ripple effects. And I think that's the thing that's most compelling to me about the work you do and the work that I do in talent optimization is understand, one of my core values is I hate waste. I hate wasted time, money, energy, talent, enthusiasm. I hate waste. And so the work we both do is trying to pull out the best within
Yeah.
people because the business is better off, our customers are better off, but those humans who are contributing every day, they're better off. And when they go home, they have more energy for their family, their faith, their physical well-being, their community contributions, their kids. And to me,
Yeah.
if we could do anything better in the world, I'm not sure what it is, then help leaders lead better, companies be more effective because we do. We spend so much time at work, and to feel smaller and underutilized or unappreciated isn't good for anyone. So,
No, you're
um,
so right. It really is about those kitchen tables that the employees go back to, right? And the impact that they're having on their not yet 15-year-olds and on all of the people around them about what the world really is like. Is the world a decent place or not? So I think it's crazy important, and I just feel very fortunate to call this work.
I agree. My daughter asked me at breakfast maybe 2 months ago, Mom, if you could do any job in the world, would you do what you're doing now? It's like, Well, that's a really profound question for 7:30 in the morning. Yeah, I think I would.
Need another coffee, but yeah, I think maybe I
Hey,
would.
you know, I've been doing it for 20 years and I love it. I'm having as much fun or more than I've ever had with great clients and really interesting problems to solve and great impact. It's like, yeah, I would. I'd travel more. They really don't like it when I'm gone, but that'll change. It's not going to be long before they're gone and they could care
Same
less what
here.
I'm doing. So it's kind of a moment in time. So let's go down this path. Um, the the concept of a resistor comes up in so many different ways. It comes up when we implement a new process or system. It shows up sometimes when we have new leadership, a new manager, even a new individual team member can change the whole
Mhm.
dynamic. And so I wanted to go down this because I think almost every client I've ever worked with, there's somebody in the mix who kind of fits this resistor profile. And I don't think it's a behavioral trait. I
Yep.
think it's much more circumstantial than that. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to delve into the times we see them show up, the ways we can effectively address them, because what I find is they're often not wrong, but either they're really bad at communicating it or there's some other factors that are about them, not the thing that they're resisting. So,
Mhm.
what strikes you as a good place to start that conversation? What
Hmm.
comes to mind?
I'm also right now, I'm thinking about abundance and scarcity.
Ooh,
Yeah. I often find myself thinking about abundance and scarcity. So here's how I would apply what you were just saying in that framework of the resistor is is liking the way things are, not wanting things to change. This way works. This might be the only way that works. I am safe where I am right now. I don't know where you're going with this. So I'm going to stay here in this. So when I say abundance and scarcity, I mean that abundance is creativity, not just a sort of Pollyanna Girl Scout, if you will, but like this sense that it isn't hard. It could be really hard work, but there's a way that we can get there. Whereas scarcity might say, oh, I don't know, we'll never find enough clients. The only way to do it is this way we've always done it, and now the world has changed and we can't do it that way anymore. Scarcity is a protective mechanism. And some would argue that it's biologically the only logical thing that we need to protect ourselves. Our bodies, our brains want to keep us from those saber-toothed tigers. And so that makes sense, and that it's actually very unnatural to work in an abundance mindset where we have all the time that we need, or we tell ourselves these things, or we'll find the answers, where we're open to opportunities and listening to new ideas, and not like danger, right? Not that feeling of
yeah.
fear and danger, and I need to protect myself.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
hearing skepticism too in that.
Right, the skepticism,
Yeah.
hmm. So
Okay.
there's one reason. I know some of the companies that I work with, you probably have this experience too. There is someone in EOS terms, we'd call them we call them the visionary. And that visionary might come with 20 new ideas every day, and they're so fun, except they're not fun. If you're trying to follow a visionary with no one in between, with no buffer, or no sense of protecting what's been built, then you've heard the flavor of the month every other month. Every day there's a new idea. Every week there's and if you didn't say no, then you're actually protecting the company by being a resistor to this visionary's new ideas. You're doing what's maybe in the best interest of their own company, and they might not
Mhm.
even see it that way. So this idea of just how new ideas come, how they're presented, how often they come, if they're followed up on or not. Is that visionary just thinking out loud? And they just heard a cool podcast and they want to talk about it, but you are the make the thing happen person in that company. And so you wonder, is this your new directive? Didn't you have a different directive yesterday? Didn't we agree to priorities the day before that? So this sort of like whiplash effect of visionary thinkers, sometimes if there isn't clear communication about whether they're just talking out loud and they're just thinking about the possibilities for some distant time, or if they're giving a direction, that can create the sort of whiplash where you almost create your own resistors because they don't understand the context of that conversation in the way that you do.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. One of the things I was thinking, it's the frequency, right? What is the quote about fatigue makes cowards of us all? It's hard to be brave when you're constantly, it's a barrage of new things that are being put upon you. So
Mm,
and even just the clarity of I'm thinking out loud for something far down the road and I'm looking for feedback on what I'm missing puts people in a totally different place of being able to listen. Just
yes.
that context versus I have this idea and what do people hear is we need to do this now. We don't have the resources, we don't have the time, we don't have the focus. So,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of it is underpinned by trust, right? If I don't have
Always.
psychological safety and trust that I can voice my questions in a productive way or that I can trust your intentions behind this change,
Yeah.
by nature, I'm going to dig in my heels and
Mm.
protect.
Mm-hmm. Because we have to, right? We have to protect ourselves and what we're building and maybe our department. So understanding, I think you're right, that the context of the conversations is just so important. And sometimes checking our own behaviors. If we are that visionary entrepreneur that we need in the world to go build stuff and have great new ideas, just having some awareness of what you're like to be around, um, that's important too. That really is. But I love the
That
way that you're thinking
self-awareness.
about that. Hmm.
Yeah. I think I'm thinking back on, and I want to get specific stories because this is what tends to really resonate with people. Um, you were talking earlier about a the medical transition to electronic records and someone who was pretty resistant, a couple people who were resistant to this process, and their whys were really worth listening to. I'd love for you to
Yes.
share a little bit of that conversation that happened because I think that's a beautiful example of why we need to tune into the frequency of a resistor and really make sure we're clear on the why behind the resistance. So could I
Mm.
tee you up for that?
Sure, sure. So I'll take you back to when everywhere, of course, doctors' offices used to have paper medical records. So there were all kinds of printout things that would come out of various machines. There were handwritten notes, then they became dictated notes. Now they're much more, it's much more automated, it's all electronic. But it really wasn't that long ago when we had paper charts. And then sometimes there would be like laboratory results came first electronically, and then maybe imaging results, you'd get those electronically. But putting these things together in a record for a tertiary care center, a real specialist center that needed primary care notes and lots of different specialist notes from different places that maybe came in different forms and came both VHS and beta, right? And they came all the ways. And then if you had to put these things together so that you knew for sure that when the patient arrived and the doctor arrived, that you could present a complete medical record so that the appropriate decisions could be made because they had all the data that they needed. So I was responsible for more than one transition like that. And one time it was with our local community cancer center, very highly regarded. We did research there, all kinds of things. And one of the doctors was particularly resistant. He didn't want to talk about electronic records. He didn't want to go to meetings about electronic records. He had no use for the training we were trying to give him for electronic records. Classic resistor profile.
Yeah.
Um, we also maybe just said he was kind of like the grumpy old dog that didn't want to learn a new trick, and that he needed to get with the program. So after a while, though, it was really kind of becoming a problem. He was the only one still not using these things. And so I went to him one day after hours and I kind of shoulder to shoulder said, "So what do I need to know? How can I get you to do this?" I was the manager and, all but begging. And he said, "Well, Wendy, you could make it work as well as my paper records, and then I would trust it." but it doesn't. And I was like, oh, no, no, no. All the smartest people are working on this. And we've been working super hard for months and months and months. So it's like really great, right? Everybody loves it. And he shook his head and he said, no, I'm not going to disparage any of my colleagues, but let me tell you a story. Off the top of his head, he shared 2 or 3 examples of little tiny bits of information that didn't have a place to live in our electronic record. So
Those were
maybe,
omitted.
yeah, they just weren't there. And
Okay.
most of the time, you didn't need them. Maybe even 85, 90% of the time, you didn't need that bit of information, or no one else looked back that far in a chart. He said, I've been treating some of these patients for 20 years. If you're going to give me the last 5 years and just a few other things that I can look back on further, then you're going to be bringing my paper charts for a long time, because I need this information to provide the best care possible. So there was not just good reason for him to resist, but if he was treating my aunt, then I want him to resist. That like that the system be damned, right? That
Yes.
we need the right information. So sometimes what I learned in that was that what's that phrase about keeping your friends close and your enemies closer, that I should listen to him, and that maybe there were things that we could tweak or we could build a little bit differently, not just for him, but for everybody. He just had a different vantage point than those physicians who were younger and were newer and simply didn't have the length of treatment records that he had. So we hadn't really been listening to his concerns, so he tuned us out. And now we needed to tune back in, invite him back in, slowly have him come to these planning meetings, kind of pull him in as he became my kind of proofreader to make
Yeah.
sure that we really had done the best job we possibly could. And then he would let go of the paper records.
It
People's
really,
lives, Mel, like it was more than, he wasn't just being a stick in the mud. He was an expert, and our system was not yet expert. There
and
was
one
a
of the
difference.
topics we just talked about was safety. And we're not talking about psychological safety in this standpoint. We're talking about medical, physical health of a
Yeah.
human. And medical seems like a place where there would be a lot of resistance for a lot of good reasons sometimes.
Yes. There's no
And
room for error, really. There's
yeah,
no room to be creative and hope for the best. That's not really the point.
right. Yeah, one of the you mentioned it real briefly, but I want to go a little deeper on it, kind of double click into it. If some of this information wasn't showing up in the records, but there was a medication that they had tried with this one patient
Yeah.
that he then went to retry, but we've already been there and the spouse remembered, no, I think we tried that one. That's, of course, then he's going to feel, and a
Yes.
doctor, any kind of provider prides themselves on expertise, care for patients. And if I'm missing things, there's a shame factor that goes along with that. There's
Hmm.
a physical safety risk. And I
Absolutely.
just, um,
Absolutely. That the systems, when we're talking about leadership and management and holding up a business of some sort that provides a service, often I'm working with experts. I'm working with physicians. Nowadays, maybe it is CPAs, wealth advisors, attorneys. They're partners that have come together, and I'm helping them build a common platform rather than just a common website, right? So rather than having individual co-located practices, I help them bring that together as one entity. Um, and they know what they're doing. That's why they're expert for a reason. They might be called into court to testify as an expert witness. So
yes,
we need to make sure that our work is up to that same standard. And if they're resisting because it's not, then that's a gift. That's truly a gift, rather than it being some sort of like personal attack, right? If you would just get on my side and we could get this done already, because it's
yeah.
frustrating, but there's really good reason sometimes.
It takes me back to my favorite show of all time, Ted Lasso. Uh, and the be curious, not judgmental quote. And really, that's what you did. You sidled up to this man, shoulder to shoulder, say, what am I missing? And
Yeah.
he knew, and he told you, and you listened, and things got better. And that's so often in the employee engagement data that we collect. The ones we know are actively disengaged, often it's actually easier to flip them into the fully engaged category
Yeah.
because they're not wrong often about what they're upset about. It's the apathy that's much harder to address, are people who are not
Oh yeah.
engaged. They're doing enough to
Active
justify.
resistance. Right, that's
Yes,
motion, right? There's motion, there's energy there. You can redirect that. But
yes. That's so
absolutely, I would rather work with a resistor than an apathetic yes man.
yes. So I
Mhm.
often tell leaders to like metaphorically put their fingers over their ears and kind of listen, try and listen to the words, not the tone, because so often these people have been so frustrated, tried sometimes multiple times to address an issue. It's falling on deaf ears. So they're doing the only thing they really know how, which is protesting. And finding ways to hear them out is is such an important job of a leader, isn't it?
Oh, it is to get outside yourself. I often talk, I reflect on that in psychology, they call it the subject object transition.
Okay.
So it's a little heady at first, but it's really not. If you're in the middle of a situation, whatever the situation is, like if you're in the middle of like you're in the middle of traffic and you're stressed and maybe you need a bio break, right? And you're like really stuck. You're right in the middle of it. You couldn't be feeling it anymore. Then your blood pressure goes up and our emotions are all involved. If, on the other hand, I'm just looking out of, say, a tall building down on a street and I say, oh, look, there's traffic. Oh, it's traffic. No kidding. It's rush hour traffic.
Yeah.
I'm objectifying what's happening. When I can name an issue and put it up on the issues list. In my work, my EOS work, a lot of it is about identifying what's happening and looking at it from a distance, shoulder to shoulder with the people that you're working with, rather than right in the middle of it. So the issue isn't the resistor. The issue is that there's something about the system that they don't like. There's something that's not working for them. The issue isn't he probably hates my guts and he never does what I tell him to anyway. But if I'm in the middle of the car in traffic, I feel like it's probably like the world is out to get me and they're going to make me late.
Do you have any Jedi mind tricks that you help leaders take on to get to pull themselves out of the weeds, pull themselves up to 50,000 feet and say, okay, get the lay of the land, take myself out of the mix? What tips do you have to share that might help us
Yeah.
better step back, zoom out?
So I don't know if this is a tip, um, but it involves a sticky note. And you write these words on the sticky note. Um, I'm really not that big a deal. I'm not that big a deal. So whatever is happening is probably not about me. It just probably isn't. So if I look at that and I laugh, or I make a big sign and I paint it up on my wall somehow, I'm just not that big a deal, then there's a way we have such expectations of ourselves, don't we, Mel? We have such pressure on ourselves as business owners or as managers. We feel the weight of the world. And most of the time, the weight of that world shouldn't be falling on our shoulders. If we're doing our jobs well, it's somebody else's job and we're supporting them. So,
Yes.
how can I support them to do it better? And maybe it's by listening to why they're resisting something rather than feeling like I'm the big deal and you disagree. So, what are the things that are happening? What's the content of this conversation? And understanding that you're just there to facilitate rather than there's ego involved when we talk about like you should listen to me. If you are resisting me, then you don't trust me, right? There's all these things in our head about that connectedness. You probably don't trust me because I'm a young female and you're not, right? You don't trust me because I haven't been in this business enough. You don't trust me because I don't trust myself, right? All of these things that are actually deep and underneath. So one thing I would say is truly just don't stress so much. Um, it is, practically speaking, I do love the put your fingertips together thing. I like to take box breaths and I snap at the same time. So a box breath, lots of people know, like you breathe in for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts. It doesn't take long, and it's a way to just regulate your nervous system and others around you if you get them to do it with you too.
Yeah.
Um, that that is really just anything that brings some mindfulness rather than like a knee-jerk
Reaction.
reaction.
Yeah.
Um, the more that I can pour into myself and understand that I'm going to do my best today, but I'm not responsible for their actions. They have their own actions, they have their own emotions, their own reasons, their own stuff that happened this morning when they were trying to get their kid on the school bus, their own remembering to stop for gas and spilling their coffee and all of that. And just remain in a place where I'm here to be supportive. I'm here to take care of what's mine to do, but I'm not here to maintain your emotions. That's you. That's not me. So all of those things, I think being able to just step away a bit is just so important.
Okay, you
What do
adjust.
you do, Mel? This is your area. This is your human capital area of expertise more than me.
Well, you just touched on two of my favorite tips that come from the same resource, and I feel like you must have read the Four Agreements
Mm-hmm.
because one of them
Great
is don't
stuff.
take anything personally, and
Right.
one of them is always do your best. And it is some, I just listened to it again because the audiobook is, I think I went for a walk for an hour and listened to the entire audiobook. It's so good. And I've listened to it between every 6 months and every year. So I don't know how many times I've listened to this audiobook now, but it is absolute pure gold in terms of being a better human, whether you're in a business, in a nonprofit, just to, you know, whether you're retired, whether you're a parent with young kids, it's all the things to me. And so I so often recommend it. So the Four Agreements, if you haven't read it, our first one is be impeccable with your word. And that isn't just do what you say you will do, but also be kind with your words. Like I remember so visibly, my daughter was like 18 months old and she's sitting in the back seat, my firstborn, and I dropped my keys between the console and the seat. And you know how frustrating that is in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this urge to sort of just like absolutely eviscerate myself for being an idiot. And my mind kind of was chirping at me like she's watching you and
She's watching.
she's going to internalize everything you say and do. So if this is how we treat ourselves, if I, this is how I treat
Mm-hmm.
myself, this is what I'm teaching her is how you should treat yourself. And I
Yeah.
kind of had like I can visually remember the driveway I was sitting in at this rental house we were in. And I went, I can't do that to her, which means I have to change my behavior. And
Mm-hmm.
so being impeccable with your word is giving yourself a little grace. And I was like, I dropped my keys. I made a mistake. And then I fixed the mistake and it cooled me down real fast.
It
And I went,
does.
I did that for her. I think having kids makes us way better humans if we are conscious about it because they're
Yes.
watching everything.
They are watching. And what seeds am I planting in her little brain? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
so I think that's a
Absolutely.
part of
So
it.
it's impeccable with your word. What are the four?
Don't take anything personally.
Yeah.
And that one of my favorite stories, and I get a lot of like jokes. I run a swim team for 100 kids every summer, ages 4 to 18. And because it's a nonprofit, I like try to do all the things. So for years, I did the photography of like the individual swimmers and the team and whatever. And one time I got some feedback from a parent that they were not professional. And I was so proud of myself, Wendy, in the moment because I said, I hope you're asking because you're a photographer and you want to help me.
Yay!
And I didn't take any of it personally because I
Mm,
knew it wasn't about me. There was a photo of their child that wasn't what they were hoping for, and they felt like they missed an opportunity. And I really genuinely hoped they were coming to me to volunteer. And someone
yeah.
on our board just laughed at me, like, really, that was your reaction? I was like, yes, and it was a win because it wasn't about me. And I think the older I get, the more I realize it's not about me. I'm not that big a deal. No one cares what I wore to that event. No one cares that I stumbled over my words. Like I don't
It's
matter
such
that
a
much.
relief, isn't
Oh,
it?
it's
It is such a relief
amazing.
that what if I don't have the perfect shoes to go that outfit that I'm going to the thing
Nobody
tonight?
cares.
It's okay. Really, I don't think anybody's gonna like write me up or something, right? No one will remember but me.
Yes. So
And if I
impeccable
don't
with the
make a
word.
story out of it, then there's no drama, right? There's just no
Yes.
drama.
If I don't make it a thing, it's
Right.
not a thing.
Doesn't have to
So
be a thing.
don't take anything
Okay, so
personally.
impeccable with your word, don't take it personally.
You already hit on always do your best because
Mm,
each day our best might look a little different. Yesterday, my best was awesome. Today, second my dream. And if I
well,
just do
there's
my best
such
in that
grace
moment,
in that. Oh my God, they're so gracious in that. Because the flip side of that is like the do-gooder, the striver, always do my best. Well, I don't know. If that wasn't really my, always do the best you can that day is
That day.
such an important end
Because
to that,
otherwise,
right?
the shame that we put on ourselves, I think, is, well, that wasn't so great. And we are looking for the flaws constantly instead of being able to celebrate, like, that was a pretty good
Yeah.
conversation. I can think of a couple things that I wish I had done in retrospect, but who doesn't look back and wish we coulda, shoulda, woulda? And so that one
Yeah.
has been really freeing, especially to the people I see that are the highest achievers who hold very high standards for their own performance and that of others. Is it's easier to give someone else grace to know maybe their best today, that's what they had to give. And hopefully we can help them get through that. I was on a call with a brand new contact this morning that was referred to me, and he got on the call and he said, "I'm sorry, I'm a little flustered. I'm not sure we should even be talking right now. I just found out that in my prior role, that my number two, my right hand, just passed away at 53 years old." And I'm like, hard stop. Your best today is going to be not that great. Let's talk about that a moment and then talk about what we should talk about in the next conversation. Let's get
Yeah.
something so we're not wasting your time. Or we can just stop now, which is totally acceptable. But it's easier to give other people grace when you give yourself a little grace.
So much, so much easier. There's such a, for those high achievers, for those people um, that are expected to succeed, right? Or maybe if they're the ones that have always been the underdog and no one expected them to. There is this drive, and it can lead right to burnout and unhappiness, no matter what you've achieved.
Yes.
So that idea that it is always do the best you can today, like the best you can bring that day, it's such an important nuance, I think.
I got a really interesting glimpse into this one way long before I found this book that I so treasure. And I was in graduate school at Texas A&M getting my master's in business. And we had these interactions with corporate executives. And I can't remember what the company was. I can't remember the woman's name, but she had like four kids, big job, super powerhouse woman. And of course, I'm like, oh, this is pretty awesome. And I said, how do you do it all? And she said, I don't. And of course, my eyes got big as saucers. And I said, what do you mean you don't? She goes, well, I just pick something each day that I'm going to be really good at. Today, I'm going to be a really good mom. Today, I'm going to be a really good volunteer. I'm going to be a really good boss today. I'm going to be a really good individual contributor. And I went, that's magic. It was just so simple to my little like box brain about I want to compartmentalize and make everything into bullets. And I
Yeah.
went, oh, that's really elegant. Thank you for that little treasure. Because I went, I
Yeah.
could do that. I could do
I
that
could be
that
really
one
great at
thing.
one thing today. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it.
Well, that was really so always do your best. Okay, and then the fourth one I think really comes back to the resistor topic in spades, which is don't make assumptions.
Mm.
That we should be curious, not judgmental. That all this judgment comes from past experiences that we're bringing into this moment that may or may not be relevant.
Yeah. Don't make assumptions.
Don't make
Oh my gosh.
assumptions.
So I have a story about that actually. Don't make
I'll
assumptions.
go. Please do.
Okay, so this is a story about I think it's a don't make assumptions story. This is a story about how I wish he had been a resistor, but instead he just did exactly what I asked him to do.
Oh,
And
your assumption then was that he would push back if we were on the wrong track, and he didn't?
yes, my
Okay.
assumption, but there was a cultural mismatch that I didn't understand. I understood sort of, but I didn't fully appreciate. So I mentioned to you that I spent a year in Mozambique, and I was there at a teacher training college, a place where arguably I had no, I had, I shouldn't have been there, maybe because I'm not trained as a teacher. So there was this assumption, speaking of assumptions, that anyone who had been through K through 12 here and had a bachelor's degree on top of that had, and this is true actually, had a lot more experience with a modern education system than most of the people that I was talking with who had been through the education system at the time in Mozambique was really very dogmatic. Like you learn history a line at a time, a specific line. It was very much like maybe like like a really old school kind of way of teaching. You did exactly what the teacher said.
Okay.
So, and very much under-resourced areas, very much under-resourced. So on any given day, there might be 80 kids in a classroom. And we were in semi-open air, like corrugated tin roof and kind of a halfway up wall. So there was lots of air flowing. Big blackboard at the front, kids all on benches. And so one of the things that we were trying to do was to introduce more creative ways to involve the children in the lessons rather than just having the teacher talking. And so, for example, if it was an arithmetic lesson and you could show that 3 plus 4 equals 7, when you've got 80 children in this classroom packed in like this, you could bring up 3 kids and another 4 kids and then have them count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that would be a visual thing that was more interactive than just learning something by rote. So that was what happened one day, was that the lesson was 3 plus 4 equals 7. And I was thinking, oh, I know how I can be helpful. I'll suggest to this teacher in training that they bring kids up and do like 3 kids plus 4 kids equals 7 kids. And won't that be fun? And I will be very helpful. And so what I didn't appreciate was that, for one, I didn't look at the next day's lesson. I assumed that it would be a lot like the day before. So that was not a good thing to assume. I also assumed that if I said something really ridiculous, that the teacher in training would ask me about it, question me about it. What I didn't appreciate was the cultural and power dynamics and such that was involved. The teacher in training was a man who had been previous to that, he had been a soldier in a really nasty war that happened in that country. And he was retraining himself for a new life in peacetime. But he was still acting like a soldier that had someone in charge of them who told him to do, hey, why don't you just bring kids up for the next lesson? Across language barriers, my Portuguese was terrible, right? But I was like, hey, so how about tomorrow you do like bring kids up for 3 kids plus 4 kids equals 7 kids? And he was like, yes, professora. So I'm watching from the back of the class. And for whatever reason, it happened that there were a few fewer kids in the class that day than otherwise, maybe some weather or what have you. So there were still dozens and dozens and dozens of kids. But it's important to know that there were, in fact, not 77 children in the classroom, because the next day's lesson was not 3 plus 4 equals 7. It was 33 plus 44 equals 77. And so he brought up 33 kids to the front of the class, and then all the rest of the kids to the front of the class. And this man who had just survived a pretty brutal, terrible war was in the position to perform for me what I had asked him to do without question, because he wouldn't question me, and I assumed he would. And he didn't have enough kids in the classroom to make 77. So now he would be embarrassed in front of 75 kids, which
His math doesn't work.
Can you imagine, right? And so he's calling people in off the street to come stand in the classroom to get to 77. Unbelievable.
Great creative thinking on his part.
He got it, right? He got it done. And I am mortified in the back of the room, thinking, I just can't even imagine what I was thinking, how much I took for granted, and how
you would interpret rather
casually,
than just
laissez-faire, I just suggested things without understanding like what was actually going to happen, without looking ahead. So I've just taken that lesson and as a lesson in leadership ever since then. Be so careful about what you're actually asking people to do. Interact with them about if that feels like a reasonable thing. Read the schedule. Don't shoot from the hip all the time. So many ways to unpack. I'm sure you're seeing all kinds of things. So, there's there's gender, there's race, there's nationality, there's like wartime, peacetime. There's so many things. I was older than he was. All of the things that made it almost impossible for him to be a resistor or
Yeah.
even just to have an opinion, and also put so much pressure or like responsibility on the person who was giving the directive that I wasn't used to that either. So I was used to having some resistance, and now I had no resistance, and I drove us both practically off a cliff. So the importance, so many lessons that I take from that, from Gregorio was the man's name, who did exactly what I asked him to. And I wish he had resisted a bit. So as we talk about like, don't make assumptions and be impeccable with your word, these things, I didn't read the book. I should have read the next lesson for the next day. But think of the position I put him and also like those children in, just the whole mess that,
Yes.
so when I say I really don't know if I had any business being there, I mean that. And also just
So
there's so many things that we can take as lessons about what we ask people to do and how we feel if we do take it personally when they find some issue with it, or if we receive that information as a gift for the greater good, or if we take it personally. Yeah.
I see too, we've talked a fair amount now about the value of resistors.
Mm,
Really, really valuable space that they can take up. They often don't do it in the most productive ways, and we wish they would. And it's our job as leaders to help them get there. But I see a couple that are really unproductive.
mm,
And I think, as I think about this topic, I think there are two root causes. And one is insecurity, and they're trying not to be found out. And the other is a core values mismatch.
mm.
And I want to start with core values if we could, because you do a lot of work with your clients, getting those right, making sure they're real and not aspirational,
Mm.
and dealing with some fallout, I would anticipate, when there are a couple people who just can't get on board. So talk to me a little bit about that. If you've got a couple good stories, um, I think that's an
Yeah.
important piece that I see that is less productive and often ends in parting ways with a team member because it just isn't their jam, whether it's the
Yeah.
role or the organization that's
Yeah.
the
Where,
miss.
where it's just not a place where they feel like they fit. When we have a core values match, people, you can almost take it for granted. You can just say, well, of course, like I feel comfortable here. These are the things that I value too. Just the other day, I was doing a core values exercise with a local community theater group. And so we ended up with some really fun names for these core values. Um,
Okay.
but one of them was that we're an ensemble company. Now, in the theater world, an ensemble company means that nobody's more important than any other. You're changing parts, like with different seasons or with different productions that you would do, and that everybody's contribution is valued. That there isn't a star and backup singers. It's an ensemble. So this was their way of talking about teamwork and the importance of being part of a team, and they were identifying that it really had been awkward at one point. There was someone in the past that was more of a solo player. They really wanted to be in the spotlight on their own. And
Sure.
that's why it always felt a little off. And that there was like this kind of about it. And so I think that's a way that we can see, well, if what, if what you, that wouldn't be the case everywhere, that this ensemble would be valued in that same way. So I thought that was one way to maybe think about fitting or not fitting. It's not like the solo player was not valued, but that's just not what we're doing here.
That's not our
Like
jam.
that's just not our jam. We are
I
doing
think
ensemble. And so if
that's
you
been
want
my
to be, if you want your solo career, if you're going to bust away from break up the band, go ahead, but just go over there and do it over
go
there.
over there.
Yeah.
I think that's one of my favorite things about the I would say the current generation of values definition. It used to be these very stodgy, individual words,
Mm,
integrity, trust,
integrity.
right? But it's so many of the clients that I work with either are in the process, have recently redefined their core values in a way that really, the words really matter. So that
Yeah.
we're an ensemble
And it can be
company.
really fun, right? It can
Really
really
fun.
be fun. So another one of theirs was the show will go on. And what that means to them. So if you've ever been in part of a production, the curtain's going up at 8 o'clock. So we're going to figure this out. So to them, that was about creativity and problem solving and just fixing it and owning it. Carry it on. Like, don't bring me your problems and go, wah, wah, right? But hey, the show will go on. So you better get ready. Let's go. I love that, right? I
I
love that.
love that. They're
Yeah.
so industry specific. I have a client who one of their core values is eat your vegetables. I was like, what? And he's like, do the needful things today that help you and us be better tomorrow,
So
that
good.
your health,
So
that
good.
ensure the health of the business. Like the boring basics really,
Eat your
really matter.
vegetables.
And eat your vegetables. And I was like, that's charming.
It really is charming and it's perfect. It really is. This is what we're about here. We're not about, that tells me right away, we're not about just like in fast, flashy growth, being
Yeah.
here. We're here for the long term. We're looking out for the health of our company, of our individuals, of our people. Do the boring stuff. Eat your vegetables, count your pennies, do the
These
thing.
mantras that get in our mind. And one of my jokes is with leaders, like they don't get it till they're mocking you, until they're making jokes about always eat your vegetables. I'm filling out these stupid forms. But until they're making jokes about it, it hasn't really sunk in. And it's a
But when
good
I love
barometer.
when they're doing that though, that's because they're doing their continuing education. They're making sure they got their license, addressed or taken care of, those types of things. And it does become a joke because it's fun, because it's shared. Oh, I got to go eat my vegetables today. I'm gonna do those things.
I'm
Love
going
it.
to do it. So I think one of the things I see about getting that playful, specific, and intentional about core values is it not only helps people opt in, it also helps people opt out, whether that's before the interview process, in
Yes.
the interview process, after they've been there a while and realize, I'm not like these people. I don't really fit here. And that's not a shame. It's a shame if you stay because your
Yeah.
contributions aren't valued the same. If you're this star performer and you want the spotlight, but that's not what
An
we're about,
ensemble.
it
Hmm.
helps people say, I'm not supposed to be here. And it makes it so much less personal for them to exit stage left than maybe it would have felt if we hadn't gotten those words. Like my daughter, when she was 9, told me, Mom, I think we're the words matter family. I'm like, oh, Virginia, we're totally
Yeah.
the words matter family. You
The
use the
words
right
matter
word.
so much.
Yes.
So
So,
much.
so if
Because
we
not
talk
every
about,
place, and this, I think this gets back to ego and also maybe that it's really not personal. Um, if I am a business owner or an employer of some sort, I'm not the only one. So, this sense that that you can't ever identify even years down the road that maybe this isn't a great fit. It doesn't mean you're it's not a crusade. You're not the only one who could be fixing or helping. They can stand on their own. They can go succeed somewhere else. And it might be one of the best things that could happen, especially if it's done respectfully and with support. And if you're really doing it out of love for this person and for your company and for what's best for everybody, um, then it feels there's much less pressure than if you think like, oh, whatever will I do? We can't let that guy go. He's been here forever.
talk
Well,
about
the
abundance
company's
versus
changed
scarcity
a
mindset,
lot.
going back to the beginning of our conversation, that's really valuable. There in the entrepreneurial circles, there's, I'm sure you've heard this idea of freeing up someone's future.
Hmm.
Not terminating them, we're freeing up their future because they're not meant to be here. They're not thriving. We're not loving
No.
them. They're not getting as much value as they could out of their trading days for dollars, which is effectively what we're all doing.
Yeah.
And so that idea, and I think in especially clients that are running on EOS, we talk about right people, right seats. It's not just EOS, we talk about it in a lot of different sectors. But when we realize isn't the right person to even be in our organization because they don't believe what we believe, then it makes it easier to repot them,
Yeah,
redeploy them to something else. And sometimes it's,
absolutely does. And especially if any of us have ever had a sister or a husband or anybody, a friend of ours, who was in a job that really wasn't great for them. Maybe it was a fine job, decent organization. They weren't being poorly treated. It just like it wasn't great for them. And they were kind of stressed and grumpy and felt kind of down. And then you see them be freed, their future freed, and they find a place that is great for them. And I don't know, the kids would call it the glow up, right? That how much bigger and brighter and better they are, happier they are. It's important to remember that I think when we're on the other side of that too, that we put our best foot forward and we really try and we invest in our people. And we also, from before they are our people, tell them who we are. We say, this
yes,
is who we are and this is what we expect around here. This
to
is
the
what's
point that we should be
rewarded
trying
around
to
here.
scare them away
Scare
with
them
our core
away.
values. If you can be
That's
scared
right.
away that easily, you absolutely are not going to be thriving here. So let's get really intentional about that up front.
Oh my gosh, I see the strongest leaders do that. They'll say, say right up front, this is who we are, and we love it. But if that doesn't sound like you, please, like, I'm going to leave. It's going to be a minute before the next person comes in. Door's right over there. Save us all a bunch of trouble and go have a wonderful afternoon, someplace where you're going to be valued and you're going to feel like you're part of this. So if it feels like a stretch, a little bit of a stretch, that's okay. We can all grow into expectations to some degree, and we all do that.
But
But if
is
it
that a
feels
stretch
like
you
a
want to make?
lot of a stretch, it's just not you. Yeah.
Okay, well, I couldn't think of a better segue from the I'm not a fit in this organization to I'm not a fit in this seat. So if I'm not a person for
Mm.
this seat, when we talk about that stretch, I was having this conversation the other day because my background, I worked at Gallup for several years, and they're the not only the beginning really of really good measurement of employee engagement, but
Yeah.
also of the Gallup Strength Finder. And we were talking about the strengths mentality that you can be anything you want to be. You just have to aim the superhighways in your brain at that goal. And it's interesting as I juxtapose my work with predictive index next to that, which the idea is what's the ideal aptitude for this role, both behavioral and cognitively? And if we can fit someone who's already wired that way, they will get up to speed faster, they will thrive, they will achieve more, we will get more value, and everybody wins. And
Hmm.
so then it's been really fun to play both of those sides of the coin. Yes, you can be anything you want to
Oh,
be. But
neat.
also if we set you up for success in a seat that fits your butt properly, you
Yeah.
can thrive. And so the other issue that I see with the resistors is sometimes there's a massive imposter syndrome going on here. I'm the wrong
Mm.
person in this seat. And when I take that data next to employee engagement data for that human, what I find is they obsess about expertise in the role because they don't think they can ask for help. It's like this very don't tell. They're very
Yeah.
protective of their information. They don't collaborate well. They create these silos and all these protective
Yeah.
structures to hide the fact that they're worried about being found out. And we are not doing them any service, leaving them in that seat. And all these weird behaviors come out of it. And
Yeah.
those are the resistors that I have to tell you I am not thankful for. It's a lack of self awareness, is the problem.
We do this. I tell you where I see this, and you probably see this too. Um, just because somebody's a really great plumber, they get promoted to plumber manager. They're a really great auto tech, and now they're the auto tech manager, X-ray
And
tech
heaven help us
manager.
if it happens in sales, because that's the worst culprit. We lose a
Oh,
great salesperson.
absolutely. Right? Because the skills and the strengths and those pathways that you're talking about, they they were for one job, right? And now we have some idea that there's a hierarchy and it's a promotion and it's a good thing that you're going to do to this person to take them out of the job that they love, that they're well trained for, where they've been succeeding for years, and give them a whole different set of responsibilities that require a different skill set and different strengths. And then they've gone from happy, and sometimes actually they don't get overtime anymore, right? And so there's a shift, and their compensation might even go down. Their responsibilities have gone up. They're not familiar with the tools that they use for this job. They have to sit in office all the time. They're
They're not
pretty
being
miserable.
recognized and validated for doing really good, tangible work. That's
They
a
can't
huge
see
shift
the
from
work
work
that
I
they're
can
doing
see.
anymore. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Huge shift
But we
from
do it
working
all
with
the
people.
time, right? We do it
Yes.
all the time. And then we call them the old dog resistor rather than validating their strengths, letting them run and contribute to the company and do what they're great at. Um, yeah, let's stop doing that.
And I think I always like to flip the script from like a company, a business, an organization to the individual, because I think so often as individuals, sometimes we find ourselves in the wrong seat or in the wrong organization.
Hmm.
And the fear of change of, oh my God, I have to go look for a job. This is not a great market to look for a job in. I should really just stick tight and do my best to stay.
Yeah.
Well, I've been in that seat before, and I felt like I was choosing daily between personal happiness and loyalty. And in this case, it was family loyalty because I was in my family business, which made
Yeah.
it exponentially harder
Oh
and
my gosh.
scarier.
Hmm.
And it was awful. And it took a toll on my marriage and on me as a parent. And there's a physical component to this that, like you were
Yes.
saying earlier, our spouses see, our friends see, and they're like, I think you should deal with this. And you're like, I'm
They know
fine.
before we know.
They
Hmm.
do. They see it.
Because, like you said, we think that word loyalty, it's so important. We're good people. Most of us get up in the morning to do something useful with their day, you know? And so if we're in a family business, I work with a lot of family businesses or closely held private businesses where maybe the second generation owner has actually worked there for fewer years than many of the employees, you know? And so there is this sense of this is the whole world, and we say things like, oh, we're a big family around here. Oh, can I cringe, right? I get it. But also that sense of loyalty can keep people down in such a way that no one ever intended, right? There was never some decision made like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna make Tom in the warehouse be the guy who was Tom in the warehouse for the next 40 years. I'm sure he'll love it. No, maybe Tom has some other interests. Maybe the warehouse has changed a lot. Maybe, he never really liked it that much to begin with. He just got really good at it.
Okay, that sparks a really interesting conversation I think we should have around individual self ownership, right? What I see in the marketplace so much today is people jump ship to go find a new opportunity, but they never once have the conversation internally. They'll be like, hey, I'm Tom. I've been in the warehouse for 27 years. I have actually some other interests and ideas I think that could help the business. No, they go to one of the competitors with their experience and they get the next opportunity that they never took the time because it was scary, and then they
Hmm.
don't do the work. And so we lose out as an organization on Tom's knowledge and skills and his relationships. And so as leaders, A, we have to be priming for that. Like, hey, how you doing? What do you want to learn next? Some really low-key conversations, but also as individuals, we have to get a little tougher to say, hey, I have an idea. I'm interested in this. Could we have a hard conversation?
Yeah.
Because it's both.
It's
Everybody
so much
shares that
both.
responsibility.
I have recently been working with some younger professionals that are so smart, women in their early 30s. And they're also really good about what I call boundaries. And now that generation and younger maybe has a bad reputation, like they just don't want to work hard. They're going to check out at 4:30 in the afternoon and that's that. Like that's terrible. Like we're not jealous.
Yes.
So I've been excited to see some people leaning into that more. And sometimes too, a little afraid of the reaction that they're getting. So it's interesting, right? So we need people to do that more. We want them to engage with us if we're running a business or owning a business. We want to know what you want and what would make you happier. And that's probably going to be good for us too, right? And if it's not, we'll help you. But then sometimes when someone says what they want, if we're not ready to hear it, it can feel like, oh, these lazy kids. You know, like, oh, they think they're so special. I had to earn my stripes. I did the work. I put in the hours. And so I think there's a really interesting thing that might be happening now where those norms are changing and we have to make sure to keep up and not see that person as a resistor, but see them as someone who has the wherewithal or the audacity to advocate for themselves in a way that I want them to. I want my kids to. I want me to. I had to learn to. But we have to be ready for that too, right? So there's like, you have to speak up and give us a chance. And also, are we listening? Are we ready to hear that? And how do we try to come together around that?
I think that brings to mind so many things for me, like this idea that the generational shift, one of the things that we see is they want to work smarter than harder. And I had
Hmm.
this experience. I was working in my family business and I was getting my hair cut, and my dad called me and he had a question about a vehicle ID number. And he said, well, you can call me back when you get back to the office. And he's clearly annoyed that I'm not at his beck and call and he needs this information that he's trying to do
Yeah.
something with. I'm like, I don't need to call you back. Hold on. I put him on speakerphone. I went to SharePoint from my phone. I got the VIN and I was done. And he was not impressed with me at all. But the incentive to have these boundaries and to be able to have work-life
Right.
balance is I've got to have better systems. Well, guess what? Better systems, if you use them, actually benefit everyone.
They
And
actually
so
work.
when Yes. And so when we go back to the four agreements, like don't take anything personally, it was personally offensive to him that I didn't need to sit in a seat in the office to
Yes, it
give him the
was.
information because that wasn't his experience. And it
Well, it
was
wasn't his
just,
experience. That's a great story, right? It's a great story. It's don't take it personally. It's his experience. There's some bit of like, how could it be so easy for you? I had to work 10 or 12-hour days for decades, and you just know? That's smart ass kid.
yeah,
There
uh,
is, though, there is a way of being open to being impressed with new systems or new ways. It was hard for him to be impressed because who were you to get your hair cut in the middle of the day?
yes. And I
Yeah.
think that, especially in family business, is an especially hot point because too often we see the next generation as a kid forever. They're 65 years old, still a kid. Really? And so there's a little bit of
Oh my
check
gosh,
your
we sure
assumptions
do.
here. But okay, I'm loving this conversation. I think we need to probably find a way to wrap it up because there's only so much time everybody has to come into these. So here, I'm going to summarize some of the things I heard that I think really are valuable and bring up one more topic that we didn't cover that I think is a great tool to have in people's toolbox. So, one of the discussion key points we're talking about is helping people move from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset and how much trust that takes, how important the context is behind the conversations of we're asking you to enter the danger, but it's not to make a change tomorrow. It's because I don't want to miss out on your input. And just that importance of being curious rather than judgmental.
Mm.
So, anything on that topic that you think I really need to include as people think about how do I get there? What's important as we address resistor behavior?
So there is a thinker that I follow who I haven't mentioned yet. Her name is Anise Kavanaugh, and she has developed the intentional energetic presence, her IEP method. And so much of it, it's much more than this, but it's really about being aware of the energy you bring into an interaction. And so that addresses the what am I feeling at this moment? Am I taking some deep breaths? Am I thinking it's personal and it's all about me? Am I insulted because my decades of work have just been somehow insulted by my daughter who from her phone can tell me something and she's not even in the office? Yeah. So that distinction, but just this way of being mindful that we impact the people around us. Back to that connectedness thing, that we
Yeah.
impact them and they impact us. And so seeing that and just sometimes taking a moment to give them the benefit of the doubt and to say, well, what can I learn from you? Or what can I learn from my reaction to you? In this moment rather than wanting to fight because I'm just moving so fast, far, like so much ahead. So taking a moment to rock back on your heels, to take a breath, to see how you are in that moment, how they are, and to give them the benefit of the doubt, to look for the good. That's the abundance mindset. Isn't so much a Pollyanna approach, but to say, well, there are other solutions. They're probably a smart person, so why are they thinking that? Maybe ask them.
There's this really charming children's book that I found called Bubblegum Brain. And the whole analogy in the book is that a box brain is someone who only sees the world as this very fixed,
Oh,
very finite. And then, but that box contains a piece of bubble gum that's your brain, and you take the wrapper off, and you now have all this
and you
flexibility and
can
creativity.
grow and
Yes.
expand in different ways. I love it.
And the school district here, we've done a whole bunch with this concept with the book. We had the school board read the book, um, and the teachers, and then it's the whole growth mindset mantra is like the power of yet, right? I haven't figured this out yet. I don't understand this yet. I don't
Yet.
understand the intent yet or the timeline, but I can engage without shutting everything down. So that kind of comes to me in that abundance and scarcity mindset is this growth mindset that we're trying to cultivate in ourselves and others.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and then
that
I'm going to
yet.
actually go ahead.
Oh, so just one last thing, I would say that it's one of the things that we teach with EOS is that there is a meeting pulse, that there is a framework, there's a time when we'll talk about this again. We can keep this on a list for later. We can continue to, you'll always know when those next conversations are happening so that you're keeping your people connected. And that gives a sense of security sometimes that we can lean into. Or if I bring it up this time, I don't have to bring it up next time. Or if I don't bring it up this time, it's still on the list and they might ask me about it. That sort of rhythm can lend a sense of peace, I think,
Yes.
to conversations that might be challenging or times when we feel like our identity is threatened by a new idea and we need to deal with a resistance in ourselves or in somebody else.
Which really takes us right into my next note around I'm going to put this sticky note on my wall that says, I'm not that big a deal. I
Not
don't
that big a
matter that
deal.
much. My opinion doesn't matter that much. And if we can strip that ego away, have you, Ryan Holiday, Ego is the Enemy?
Yeah.
His work
Yeah.
is so great. So there's one. Um, and then my last real segment around here of things that we should be thinking about is sometimes the resistance is simply a mismatch. They're not the right person in the organization. They're not in the right seat. And having the courage to address that and meet
Yeah.
that head on can be scary, but so important. And the tool that I mentioned that I really think we should have touched on is the people analyzer in the OS. All these things are things we can
Yes.
R&D, rip off and duplicate, even if we don't go down the path. But it really marries
Absolutely.
the organization fit with the role fit, where we evaluate people against our core values. How are they doing? Meeting those. And then for the role, do they get it? Do they want it and have capacity to
You
do
know,
that work in
GWC,
excellence?
it's so important. EOS does some things very, very well, and primary among them, I think, is to make applicable some of these big concepts into super simple tools. So, is somebody gifted in this way? Do they get it about what you need to have done? Do they want this job at this time? Not just a promotion, not just with this company, but is this the right job at this time? And do they have the capacity, the learned skills to do it? Or do they need to learn? And so, if you're ready to teach them, that's great. But if you need somebody to come in, not green and like hit the ground running, knowing that about it too. I appreciate you bringing that up because the GWC, even within the people analyzer, can be so freeing. And you just say, no, actually, they're not. So, let's go find something and help them find something where they will fly and they will succeed.
And the whole topic of this entire podcast has always been you've got people problems. And it's amazing how fast, if we just take that GWC discussion and we have a people problem and we start with, okay, do they GWC the role? And
Yeah,
I feel like 70% of the time the answer is within those three questions. Do they get it, want it, and have capacity? If
yeah.
we start there, that is an awesome gift to help us get clarity that we can take action on. So,
Mel, we teach, and I'm sure you do too. At least I always say there's two kinds of people problems, and only two: right person or right seat. So 70% of it's the seat, right? Then sometimes it's a core values mismatch. But right people, right seats, and it's not anything else.
I know. And just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. I don't want to discount it,
Oh
but
no.
it
No,
is
simple does not mean
sometimes very
easy.
emotional. But this resistor topic is a very emotional one. It's one I see at least somebody within each of my client organizations, and I'm always trying to understand what's the foundation of that resistance to help them along. And I'm so glad for this conversation. Thank you for being open and abundance in your mindset to
Yes.
go down this path that we hadn't even talked about, but I
It's
felt like
been
there was
fun,
good
Mel. I
energy
appreciate
around
it.
it today. So if people want to reach out to you to learn more about EOS, how should they get in a hold of you?
Sure. The best way is through my EOS website. So that's wendy.waldron at eosworldwide.com. Or
Great.
even just search or, ask your favorite bot, Wendy Waldron EOS, and I should show up for you.
Well, thank you for the work that you do. It really is connected to so many meaningful outcomes in life for individuals and organizations and leaders. And I tremendously admire the impact that you're making on the world. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today, Mel. It matters what we do, right? And it matters that we love it. So thank you.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Hope you'll join us for another episode of You Got People Problems in the future. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode of You've Got People Problems. If you got something out of the conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with the other leaders in your network, because let's face it, we all have people problems. You can watch full episodes on YouTube or listen on your favorite podcast app. But either way, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.